Hey everyone, welcome back to another Scrum series with Mark and Mac. I am Mackenzie Ginnathan. As always, I have my partner in Scrum Crime, Mark Lander. And today we have a special guest, Sarah Crisp. And today we're going to be talking about just a rundown of the product owner role. And we thought, what better opportunity to bring on an actual PO with tons of experience to offer her perspective on the role and just give us insight into that world. So, Sarah, welcome. Maybe you can give us a quick rundown on who you are and why you're here.
Cool. Well, thanks for letting me join. Um, Me as a PO, I've been working on software products for 2021 will be my 10-year anniversary. So I've had the actual PO title in a bunch of different spots. So I've been in lots of different industries like veterinary medicine, banking, the music industry, and now foraying into group insurance. So yeah, what I've seen over the years is just that being a product person is so fascinating, and everyone has so many different ideas about it, and it really bends and shapes to fit the organization and the kinds of products and teams you work with. So I'm excited to hear what you guys think too.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like hints into like your thoughts on it already. Like it's kind of like flexible role, it sounds like. So yeah, maybe we can start there as far as, what is the role of PO on a Scrum team? Like why does it even called out in the Scrum guide?
Yeah, what I get from that is like the very foundation of the PO role on a Scrum team is somebody who specifically focuses on making sure that things are prioritized and clear and communicated through the backlog of work. Like that's the foundation beneath everything.
Mm.
So if somebody has their eye on that and is making sure that it's taken care of, it's like caring for it, it's a living thing. um, it can make a world of difference, especially once your team's like mature, up and running, and like moving real fast.
Yeah, I like that. It's almost like you're a caretaker or gardener of the product backlog, right? And I've seen that go really well where you can look at that artifact as like a source of truth and just clear communication to the team and yourself and to other stakeholders, or the POs that kind of walk away from it and just it just kind of like decays and dies and just like just it turns into a source of anxiety, right? But yeah, we can get into all that stuff later. Cool. And like, according to the Scrum guide, the PO's role is to maximize the value delivered by the development team, right? That's the quick blurb. One thing that always kind of strikes me is like that word value. And so you kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, like working with so many different companies. Like, how do you think about value when you're working on a product with the development team? Like, how does that resonate with you?
That's probably my favorite part of the job. Is that uh, the way that I like to approach the role is that I want to understand really like what's important to the company and the customers, and like really get to the heart of like why are we here, what are we doing for people, how do we make money, and then really use that to guide like prioritization and to determine, because things can be the same amount of value or seem to be of similar value, but making a call based on timing and what the business needs at that moment or in the near future is really like that pivot point where you can decide.
Mm.
So it's, yeah, adding value. You can add value in a lot of different ways, but it's really a contextual decision that needs to be made, and it requires a lot of like cross-functional understanding of what's all going on.
Mm. Any like metrics for value you can think of, or I'm just curious about that. Like, how do you have you ever done that, like quantifying value
Yeah.
based? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite way to do that is when you work on something that's like very customer facing, like it's tools that your customers or clients use every day to accomplish their job or, complete a project. And those are really easy to track and to measure by, just monitoring their behavior, monitoring actual changes in activity. Like if you have goals, like we want customers to submit this many orders based on what we know to expect versus how much we expect it to increase. And also, the fun product world interviewing, like just talking to your customers and finding out, as this has changed or over this period of time and your experience with this, like what have you struggled with our product or our company? And oftentimes, our customers aren't thinking of the product and the company, like it's all just an interaction with they're doing business with us in some way. And so that always like brings you back down to earth.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that customer interaction where so many discussions I have in previous companies and that type of stuff is people just assume what the right thing to do is. And the layers between the Scrum team and even the PO to the customer are just so deep that lose touch on what you're actually building and why you're building it. Right. So it's like as much as you can do to just like remove those barriers to the customer and just like see what they're doing, see what their pain points are. You can really help like understand what they're going through and what value is to the product. Right.
Yeah, whenever I feel like I'm putting too much pressure on myself to know too much technical detail or, dive way too into the weeds in certain things, I try to create some sort of like chosen ignorance about things so that I can like keep some sort of like a neutral, like, wait, why are we doing this? What can we do? Like, just to allow myself to ask like the dumb questions that really take us back to the beginning of the conversation of, do we really need to do this? Because sometimes you can get so far down the road and then realize that you passed the mark a while ago, and that's okay. Like, it happens. But
Mm-hmm. Now, Mark, I'm curious from your Scrum Master perspective, like how would you describe the relationship between the Scrum Master and the PO? Because they're both kind of like leadership type roles on the Scrum team in different aspects. So what does that look like? Like what is the relationship to you between the Scrum Master and the PO?
Yeah, I think the default is for the Scrum Master to be seen as the servant leader, but I think that relationship really is to be a partnership in leadership there. It's easy to distill down. The team is there to do something. The product owner is there to kind of help have that vision for where we're going, why are we here, and then the Scrum Master is that kind of like eyes at a little bit higher level to say, is this all working as intended? Is everyone focused? Is everyone in sync and aligned toward that common goal?
Yeah, I in my little mind, I kind of use a metaphor of like I almost see like the PO as like a bus driver. They're kind of driving the bus. They're leading us to the promised land, that type of stuff. And the Scrum Master might be like more of like a mechanic or a cheerleader, kind of like making sure the bus is working well. You
Right.
know, um, and it's funny, God, without that PO leadership vision, things go awry really fast. If you don't have that strong PO leadership, it's just like, well, what are we even doing? Like, Sarah, like you said, it's like, is this even important? Like, why are we here? Just you really lose that sense of understanding of the customer. Now, Sarah, this comes up all the time, and I would love to hear your perspective. How technical does a PO need to be? Because it's like, you know, some challenges that POs have is, should I be writing technical stories and
yeah.
tasks? Like how much should I understand that? Like how deep does a PO need to be technically to be valuable?
I don't think there's ever a perfect answer to that. Like, you need to, as a PO, you need to be adaptable, you need to be curious, and you need to be able to feel out what that right level is so that you don't become prescriptive or start making assumptions. But at the same time, that you're not so ignorant to the technical details that, by choice or not by choice, that you can look at, an item in a backlog that's written by an architect or somebody who's contributing and generally understand and be able to ask questions about it. It's not that you need to be able to articulate all the detail yourself. It's just you really need to know why, because at the end of the day, you're there to make sure that it's prioritized and it's clear that there's value for a reason. And yeah, so it's whatever gets you there, really.
Got it. So it
Like
kind of comes.
some products you're working on a Scrum team where you're like reconfiguring Salesforce and stuff. Like there's so many different things you can be working on, and then also you can be building like like completely modern thing, and like using a lot of machine learning and like data science, and it's there's no right answer for anybody.
I think that's
And
true.
that's
Sorry, I was
oh,
just gonna say, go for it, Sarah. Sorry.
I was just going to touch on the rise of like the technical PO and PM like designation that I've seen a lot. So I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's really cool how that's being mixed into new teams.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, you could ask the same question of the Scrum Master. How technical should a Scrum Master be? And my answer to that is just as you said, it totally depends. And it's all about, can the team collectively, product owner, team, and Scrum Master, can you have the same conversation? Is everyone on the same page about how and what is being delivered?
It's funny. If I had to distill down a tweet about this, I always had a tweet for Scrum Masters, like how technical should a Scrum Master be? And it's always been, well, technical enough to facilitate the team interactions, right? If you're so out of the weeds of the technical like knowledge that you can't really know how to make calls and help facilitate those interactions, you're not going to be very effective Scrum Master. And what I would say to add to that little tagline for Scrum Masters is POs need to be technical enough to prioritize the backlog, right? Where if you can't make that call as far as prioritizations goes, you probably need to do a little bit more understanding of the technical weeds, right? But Chris, you kind of alluded to this, where if the PO becomes way too knowledgeable of the system, there is that danger of them being prescriptive. It's like, oh, here's what the customer needs, and oh, by the way, here's how to build it, and here's what I expect on all the little details, and that kind of limits the team's ability to create creative solutions that the PO might not thought of, and kind of takes away that kind of like just like the self empowerment of the development team.
Yeah, it's kind of, it feels like there are things you can do to facilitate conversation and understanding, like Mark said earlier. Like if everyone's on the same page and having the same conversation, like that's really the magic of it. So it's really, I think there's something there that is the kernel inside of all this.
Yeah. One other question that comes up a lot is, how do you balance the short-term needs of the product versus the long-term needs of the product? And maybe we can delve into it a little bit here, which is also technical debt. Technical debt is something that is very important to balance, as far as, do you do feature work now because customers are screaming at you, or do you do technical debt pay down because in the long term, product's not going to work very well? So in your mind, Sarah, how do you think about that short-term versus long-term needs and how to prioritize?
Yeah, well, that ties really well into the like how much how much of the technical side of things do you need to know as a PO? Because when it comes to things like technical debt, you really need to understand like the long-term implications of everything, and especially some types of teams and companies. Like I've been a PO in a company that's a small company, one development team, and no DevOps, no architects, nobody doing anything, just, 5 devs trying to figure it out. And it was really important for us to all be really well informed of our stack, and also what technical debt our team in the past had accrued, and how we can make sure that we're mitigating that going forward beyond just getting out of the debt we already had. And so it took a lot for me as the PO to really learn about, how to mix that in. I did a lot of research on my own, just from product resources and experts on best practices. There's like, everyone's looking for a golden ratio, like 25% technical debt at all times, but really for my team, I kind of set an expectation of, for at least a year, and with the leadership of the company, everything, for at least a year, we're probably going to be about 50% tech debt in our sprints at all times until we get out from, this little mountain we're under. And so it's really like one of those areas that the balance is key to understanding the whole business, and not just how to make things happen in the short term, build little features, but really how does that fit into the big picture, and how are we going to sustain this, maintain it, and build upon it, or deprecate it in the next 1 to 3 years, So
that's a good point as far as product lifecycle, right? Not everything is
oh,
going to be new
yeah,
and shiny,
I
right?
love killing features. I love it.
Yeah. And some features need to be sunsetted, some products need to be sunsetted. And so that balance can shift over time, which is like, hey, this product is old, it's on its way out.
Yeah.
Maybe it's mostly just like keep the lights on, a lot of technical debt, no new features coming down the pipeline. Right, versus like something new where it's like we don't even know what we're really building. We don't really have that product market fit yet. So we're just going to keep iterating on new features until we hit that sweet spot. And once we hit that sweet spot, then we're just going to like double down on that and really
Mhm.
plow on it. All right, Mark, I've been talking a lot. What do you got, PO wise?
Well, I like where you guys were going there as far as like the trade-offs involved with technical debt and long-term, short-term thinking. Like the key there is just as a team, it's not all on the product owner. As a team, are you keeping that visible so the decisions can be made in a logical way? Because it can always boil down to a business case why you might need something sooner than later. But as long as you're not, someone has to keep an eye on that long term. You can't sacrifice so much of the long term that you remove yourself from being competitive, right?
Totally.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've definitely had to learn how to pick up on, like, I don't want to say vibes, but it's kind of vibes from the developers when they're like in the middle of work. They're like, "Oh, I keep running into this thing." And I'm like, "Why? What thing? Why is it so hard to work around, you know? And what would it take?" And so just like kind of digging in when there are issues that arise, and understanding if there's any like product implications for that or work that we could do to mitigate that. So it's also working with the Scrum Masters when POs are lucky enough to have one.
Yeah.
And you know, really figuring out like what's best for the team and how can we continue to improve. Like it's all about just improving not just the product but the way we're working and how we can deliver value to the business. Like
Yeah.
go
Because
Scrum.
you've worked as a PO where there was no Scrum Master. So you're kind
Yeah,
of playing.
I've been a well, that's another thing about PO roles is it's more rare than I think it should be for a PO to actually just have the PO role be the scope of their job. So my employment has often been hung on or started in another like defined role, and then there's an agile transformation or something like that, and PO kind of gets tacked on. And so then you're trying to do multiple jobs, realizing that if you don't look at the backlog like at least once a week, that you have no idea what's going on. And it's a really tough spot to be in. I've written a couple Medium blog posts about it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sorry, Mark, you've probably been in the situation a lot where POs are like a halftime role, right?
Mhm.
Or
Where,
less. Yeah.
yeah, or less. Yeah, exactly. Sarah, like you talked about, like companies have their existing organizational structure. Oh, hey, we got to go agile. Cool. Boom, agile teams. Who's going to be the PO? Hey, Sally. Sally's pretty close to the customer. Well, let's make her a PO. And then, Sally has her normal job, but also needs to do this PO role. And
Mhm.
Sarah, I don't know your opinions. I feel like the PO role is definitely needed to be 100% full time. Like you need to be in that role, doing that full time to really be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact that for every PO role I've been in, the majority of time I spend is reading and listening and processing information so that I can distill it
Mm,
into a more succinct way of communicating it and and how to frame it in a backlog view and all of that. Like it really takes a lot of thought and processing. And especially when it comes to more technical things, if you're not coming from a technical background, or if you are coming from a technical background, how to do the reverse and make it a lot more consumable for, you know, an average person to
yeah,
just know what it means. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of thinking and time that needs to be spent, no matter what kind of brain processor or how fast you're used to working. Like, it's just a lot of it needs to be a very thoughtful position to be
yeah,
done well, for
yeah.
sure.
Need to be in the weeds. Last topic question. All right. I am new to this agile stuff. Really curious about this PO role. It sounds really fun and exciting. Job market's hot. How do I get started? How do I get started to be a PO? And what's your opinion on that?
Um, I've seen the easiest way in is often to just accidentally be around it. um, like most product people that I've ever met or talked to or known about, like there's no college course or, like there really isn't like a set thing where you're like, I'm going to go to school to get this thing and go into this job. And so it's often when you're like, I got into it by working in veterinary medicine in an actual hospital, and they needed somebody to help launch a software product who had domain expertise and understood the internet. And magically, I already worked there. But it's really being a domain expert in some sort of way, or like circling around it, and then and oftentimes it's also that you tend to work well and communicate fairly naturally with technical teams. So yeah, I usually recommend to people that if you want to go in that direction, to be working in a company that you'd like to do that job in, and to see how you can help out, because you know Scrum teams and development teams are cross-functional in need, and any support and partners we can get from the business is great. And it also helps people from the business, learn more about our little world. So
Totally. Yeah, great answer. I yeah, I mean, I'd be shocked if, you ask like a 3-year-old or 5-year-old, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And they're like, "I want to be a product owner." It's like, I don't
well,
think
I'm
that's ever.
sure you guys know this too, but this is like a great field to work in, to always be able to laugh at like internet memes and jokes about parents not understanding what you do.
Yeah, that's very true. Right. Yeah, especially with Scrum Masters. It's
I've
like, so
given up.
you play rugby? No, it's not it. All right, that's it for our product owner rundown. We could easily talk about this subject for like another hour or two, but we'll keep it short and sweet. Thanks for stopping by. Chris, Mark, any last words you want to say?
No, thanks for coming on, Sarah. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks. Love to do it again.
Yeah, totally. Definitely keep you on. All right, see you, everyone.
See ya. Thanks.